Good morning. This is Boreas Ponds. It is the most beautiful place on earth. A couple of months ago, you bought it. So you own this place along with 19 million other people. Paid about $14 million for it. So let me give you an idea of what you got for that money. This is an area the size of Manhattan. There are no homes, no fences, no businesses, no public highways, no communities. It is a pristine complex of forest and wetland and water. Governor Cuomo is deciding what to do with this place right now. The fate of this parcel has a lot to do with the fate of the communities around it. Those communities are asking the governor to put motorized recreation all over this place. I want to show you why we think that's not a great idea. He's got a couple of months to make up his mind about what to do here. Now, let me introduce you to some of the other owners of this property. This is Bob, he's a cat. This is Brooke, she's a trout. That's Herman, he's an ermine. This is a river otter. Now, this young lady disappeared from our parcel for a long time. About 1890, there were no more moose in the Adirondacks. They're coming back now, and this parcel is one of the places they're calling home. This is the one that may have the shortest lease of all the wildlife on this property. Bicknell's thrush is the world's rarest songbird. It lives and breeds in the mountains of the Adirondacks, above 2,800 feet. There's not much territory above 2,800 feet. It's mostly slopey, stunted forest. There are only 50,000 of these left in the world, mainly because its other home is in Hispaniola, Dominican Republic and Haiti. And its habitat, even up here, is not protected well outside the Adirondack Park. If it's going to survive, we need places like Boreas Ponds to exist. So, conservation organizations, including my group, the Adirondack Council, the Adirondack Mountain Club, the Citizens Campaign for the Environment, New York League of Conservation Voters, Natural Resources Defense Council, environmental advocates, the Wilderness Society, and Audubon, got together to come up with what we believe is a better idea. This map shows Boreas Ponds in context with the lower High Peaks Wilderness area and that highway that goes along the bottom, which is the Blue Ridge Road. That starts at exit 29 of the Northway. Runs east to west, goes underneath this property. Boreas Ponds, as you can see up near the top here, under this plan would be surrounded by wilderness. All of this blue would be wilderness. There would be a road about 6 miles in to allow people to gain access to this area, but they'd have to park out here and travel the rest of the way to the ponds on foot. Giving a mile buffer really makes a huge difference in what happens to these ponds. They're very shallow, they're not enormous, they're pristine at the moment and have absolutely no invasive species in them. Also fits into a larger scheme where these 5 parcels, including Boreas Ponds that have recently been purchased by the state, could be added to the High Peaks Wilderness area, and you see how they fit like missing puzzle pieces into the wilderness area. They also allow a connection here between the High Peaks and the Dix Mountain Wilderness. That would allow the entire region to be consolidated into a single wilderness of 280,000 acres. That'd be about the same size as Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, about twice the size of Zion National Park. It would help to attract visitors from all over the world. And it would do something to bring new commerce to the struggling communities of North Hudson and Newcomb. Now, you may remember North Hudson as a place, excuse me, where Frontier Town is. If you're old enough to remember Frontier Town, it's been closed since the 1980s. It's the only billboard on the Northway is located at Frontier Town, and it's blank right now because there's nothing there. Newcomb was a mining and logging town that really lost a lot of its economy when the mines closed And logging is really not done by chainsaw anymore, it's done by heavy equipment. So what used to take 40 or 50 people takes one person and a feller buncher. So employment has been low in these communities. However, these communities are recommending to the governor that he not put wilderness everywhere around that pond. They're asking that these roads that used to be used for logging on this property remain open, and that they be used for mountain biking, snowmobiling, in some cases allowing guides to go back there with their clients in vehicles, and in limited circumstances, all-terrain vehicles. We think that that's a recipe for a disaster on this property. Eurasian milfoil is one of the things that most often comes with motorized boating. Bringing a trailer in from another lake can spread non-native species from one to another. Indian Lake, very nearby Boreas ponds, was New York's largest lake without any invasive species in it until last summer. And we found this miserable little critter in there. Now this is a spiny water flea. It comes from Asia. This is a crustacean that outcompetes other zooplankton and makes it difficult for fish to survive in their native habitat. It replaces the food chain, essentially, and it is terrible to eat. It's got this spiny exoskeleton, and its nutritional value is negligible. So you see the fishery decline almost immediately when this thing moves in. It's one of probably a dozen invaders that are out there in Lake George, Lake Champlain, places where they get a lot of boat traffic, and that boat traffic isn't inspected before it gets in the water. Some of that's changing now, but we still don't have a statewide boat inspection program, and the law that requires people to clean their boats before moving them from one body of water to another expires this year. Now, there are reasons why we believe wilderness is the better choice for classification and management of Boreas ponds and the properties around it. For one, it's what the visitors say they want. Now here's a survey of what people who come to Essex County and Hamilton County have said in the last 5 years, and in 2014, the last year that we have an accurate survey for. And what we see is that they want to come for outdoor activities, and that they'd like to see something cool while they're out. And if you've got a place for them to relax and dine and shop, and that's all gonna get used. Well, outdoor activity could mean anything, right? Maybe riding an ATV or a snowmobile? No, as it turns out, hiking is really by far the #1 activity that people want to engage in. Canoeing and kayaking is next, fishing, although not always in a boat, and snowmobiling is way down here. Less than 8% actually want to do that when they come to the Adirondacks. ATVs didn't make the list. Reason #2, we think. Clarkson University put a study out in December. Now, Clarkson's got a great business school, and they do some really innovative things. They worked with their Center for Sustainable Tourism and took a look at where people invested money in the Adirondacks over the last 10 years. They examined 77,000 separate real estate transactions and found that when you classify a piece of property as wilderness, the community does about 25% better than it would otherwise. People are willing to pay more to be close to wilderness. Not only are they willing to, they have, and they'll continue to. And then there is the example of Keene Valley and the Northway. Back in 1950, the Northway was constructed. Now this little ribbon of asphalt from New York, actually stretching from Albany to Montreal, really gives a clear path from New York City into the Adirondacks and provided an opportunity to get there a lot faster. The Adirondack Park is the largest park in the contiguous United States. It is larger than Yellowstone, Yosemite, Grand Canyon, and Glacier National Parks combined. They would all fit inside with no trouble. The green, the dark green you're seeing, is the forest preserve. That's protected by the state's constitution as forever wild. The light green is the private land of the Adirondack Park. That's commercial forest land, farmland, and 130 little rural communities. The biggest one is Saranac Lake with 5,000 people in it. Most of them have a few hundred. 50 years ago, we decided to build an interstate highway right through it. wasn't a popular idea with everybody. It took a constitutional amendment to allow it to cross the forest preserve. But the trip from New York City dropped from 12 hours, sometimes 16, to 5. Suddenly, you could eat breakfast in Manhattan and be on the slopes by lunch. And it's a nice ride. A lot of people really liked it when it first opened. It's a beautiful highway. It goes through some of the most breathtaking country in the world. At the time that it was finished, Keene Valley was on a sharp decline. Keene and Keene Valley, they're both in the same town, two hamlets in the same community. Unemployment was very high. Their population had dropped to the lowest point since 1820. There weren't many people there in 1820. However, over time, this new traffic that dropped all these people right on the doorstep of this community, because it is the gateway to the High Peaks Wilderness, allowed a whole lot of local businesses to grow up that are owner-occupied. The Mountaineer is one of the most well-known. You can see in this photograph here how gray and dingy it was back in 1975 and how it's all brighter and more colorful now. Actually, it has had an addition. And the Noon Mark Diner is another place that people rave about after visiting Keene and take home a pie or some baked good from the place, some measure of comfort getting down off the slopes after achieving a great feat of having climbed one of the high peaks of the state. Keene's population is now 1,100, 400 people higher than it was back when that started. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that's a lot compared to the town of 700 people. It's got among the highest incomes in Essex County. Only 1.5%, less than 1.5% of the population is living in poverty, and its population continues to grow. Now, meanwhile, North Hudson and Newcomb are still struggling. North Hudson's got more like 10% of its population in poverty. Newcomb, not far behind. Both of them, though, have some things that they can build on. SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in the middle of town is a pretty good engine for economic growth in that community by itself, in that it brings people from all over the world to come and see the place. There's a college campus right in town. They also have a visitor interpretive center that's run by Syracuse University as well. And Camp Santoni is there. It's a great camp, preserved for people to go and visit, and it's a nice walk back into the woods. Pretty level, nice place to go. But Newcomb needs business. It doesn't have a gas station. It doesn't have a grocery store. It's remote, and it's far from the edge of the High Peaks Wilderness right now. Frontier Town, we talked about a minute ago. It's right at exit 29. If it were to become the new hub of transportation in this region, would be a very convenient location. It's 25, almost 30 miles closer than Keene Valley is to New York City. That's a lot of time to take off the trip. It provides an opportunity for outfitters and businesses that would be related to that transportation hub to grow in the Frontier Town neighborhood and reestablish a community that ought to have a whole lot more going for it than it does right now. But Boreas Ponds is the key to all of this. What the governor does with this property makes all the difference in the near future and 50 years from now. We believe that to protect the water quality, the wildlife of Boreas Ponds is very important. But we see this also as an economic opportunity, as a way to bring two struggling towns into the 21st century, help them make the transition from their industrial past into a future that's based on hospitality and tourism, but is more sustainable, long-term, and gives them a future that they can actually say to their kids, you've got a place where you can come back to. Governor Cuomo will be making that decision in the next couple of months. We urge you to let him know how you feel about it. Thank you very much.